Story. Once upon a time, in the land of Umudike, there lived a woman named Nkoli. Nkoli was a woman who had no husband and children. She lived in an empty hut close to the river side, where she would sometimes go to the farm as there was no means for her survival except farming. The villagers do not interact with her. They always pass her by without greeting her. Even her age mates ignore her as though she was not a human. Whenever Nkoli goes to the market, they do not sell to her. They consider her a bad luck and sometimes call her a witch. But Nkoli never took their words to heart, as she hoped that someday they would realize their wrongdoings and change, as well as treat her nicely. But as each day passes by, Nkoli grows pale and older. Yet she had no child and no one to support her. But the true story behind that is her husband and her children died due to flood when they decided to travel to her husband's maternal home for holidays. This sad experience, however, made the villagers hate her the more, as they called her a witch for killing her husband and children. Nkoli suffered rejection, and this made her sick most times, as there is no one by her side to help her. Unknown to the villagers, Nkoli had a spiritual gift which she got from her grandmother. She has never used the gift, and she kept it a secret for years, as she felt no one was worthy to know about it. One day, as Nkoli was going to the river to fetch water, she fell down and was badly injured. But a young girl who was also going to fetch water, as well as helping her, cleaned her injury and fetched the water for her. This young girl's name is Chidinma. Chidinma did not only fetch water, but offered to assist Nkoli with other chores. This kind gesture was a surprise to Nkoli, as she was amazed because no one has shown her kindness for years now. Nkoli prayed for Chidinma and asked Chukwu to bless her. Chidinma is the first daughter of Mazi Ude, a young girl of 18 years that is kind and beautiful. She sold baked bean during weekdays at Eke market days, and during normal days when she is less busy, she goes to Nkoli's farm to assist her with farming. This made Nkoli happy and less worried. Chidinma continued, and this made Nkoli sleep peacefully at night, knowing that someone cares about her. Nkoli had an old-time friend, Nkiruka, a middle-aged woman who saw Nkoli as a big threat to the village, as she went to the chief council to report her and suggest that she would be banished. She and other women poisoned the minds of their children against Nkoli. The children started disrespecting Nkoli, mocking her and deliberately trying to trigger her, as they knew that she wouldn't react or do anything to them. While Nkoli was going to the farm one day, those group of kids threw stones at her. She was angry, but she never said anything to them. She only left there in sadness and pains. The children also laughed at her and shouted, "You can't do nothing, old witch." Years later, Nkoli could no longer go to the farm or anywhere else. She was now weaker, older, and pale. But one thing that surprises her is the fact that Chidinma still comes to help her out. Nkoli knew one day she would be no more, so she called Chidinma into her hut, told her of her spiritual gift and gave it to her. In her words, Chidinma, my daughter, I appreciate your efforts. You're such a sweet soul. You helped me when I had no help. You are the child I never had. I love you. Please take this gift from me. This is a power to raise a dead person once. And anything you wish for will always come through. May Chi bless you and give you a good husband and respectful children. Chidinma was astonished as she knelt down in awe to collect the staff of power. After she left, Nkoli gave up the ghost. Chidinma never knew Nkoli had died. It was after 2 days that the villagers got to know that Nkoli was dead. Chidinma cried and wept, but she could not do anything as Nkoli was already gone. Months later, the villagers all forgot about Nkoli, but Chidinma never did. But she decided to move on with her life and business. Chidinma decided to focus on her baked bean business, but something shocking happened. The more she sells, the more profit she gets. Her business had a lot of profit. This encouraged her and made her happy. Soon, the time for New Yam Festival in the land of Umudike was fast approaching. The king ordered that every maiden should be in attendance as the prince would choose his dream bride that day. This news brought joy to the heart of every maiden in Umudike as they started preparing attires, beads and ornaments that would make the prince choose them. This became a topic in the mouths of every maiden as they would sometimes gossip and argue and say who would be chosen. Chidinma didn't think all this was necessary as she told her friends that they should go get better things to do rather than keep drooling over a prince that will never choose them. This statement pissed Oledo, one of Chidinma's friends, and she walked away in disgust. She loved the prince and dreams of being his wife. Soon it was 3 days to the New Yam Festival. Chidinma volunteered to sweep and keep the festive ground in order. She even made baked bean in large quantity to share to the children that would be in attendance on that day. One interesting thing about Chidinma's life is that suitors had already started coming for her hand in marriage from both Umudike and other places as well. These men would bring gifts and money to her parents, and it just seemed like a competition, but Chidinma was not ready as she never gave any of them a chance. The day of festival finally came. It was a colorful event with lots of cultural display. There were masquerades, dancers, singers, and visitors from all the land who came to celebrate and participate in the occasion. After the king had addressed the people, the maidens all danced. They danced in one after the other for the crown prince to pick a bride. But Chidinma wasn't a part of them as she didn't feel it was necessary. Unfortunately, none of the maidens found favor in the sight of the prince, and gradually the festival came to an end. All the maidens were disappointed. But as time passed by, everything was forgotten and back to normal. Chidinma traveled to her maternal home to assist her grandmother in her farming business and also establish her baked bean business there as well. But 12 months later, a deadly disease struck the prince. This was a shock to the Umudike clan. He was very sick. The whole land of Umudike was in chaos as the king started inviting diviners and chief priests from other villages to seek solution to the problem. Not just that the prince was ill, the land of Umudike became less productive and infertile as farmers either had low or no yield at all. There was no rainfall and soon scarcity was the problem of the community. Unfortunately, as The diviners could not find a lasting solution. The prince died, and the whole royal family was in sorrow and chaos. But somehow, the king believed that the prince would come back. He ordered that the news shouldn't be announced yet, as he goes to his chambers to commune with the gods. Chidinma finally came back from her maternal home, and when she heard the prince's sickness, and people were also gossiping that the prince might have died, Chidinma immediately had compassion on the prince and went to the palace. She requested to see the king. She told the king that she has a solution. The king was shocked but happy as someone finally has a solution. He asked the guards to take Chidinma to the room where they kept the prince. Chidinma immediately placed the staff on his head and shouted, "Stand up!" Immediately, the prince stood up, coughed, and he came back to life. The king and everyone present was amazed and happy. The queen knelt down in tears, thanking the gods. They all rejoiced as drum sounds were heard from the palace. They thanked Chidinma and offered her a place to stay in the palace. The prince woke up on seeing Chidinma. He screamed, "Father, that is my dream bride." Chidinma was confused but hurriedly left the palace, even when they begged her to stay. A week later, the king celebrated the son's health that was back to normal, and in that mood, the chief priest arrived. When he arrived, the king immediately ordered everywhere to be quiet and asked, "What do we owe this visit, eye of the gods?" He replied, saying, "Do not rejoice yet. The land is infertile and polluted. Go seek for mercy from she whom you all have offended. The gods have spoken." After saying those words, he left. The king started asking questions and seeking answers from different spiritualists before he finally got to know that Nkoli spirit is angry at the whole Umudike for the cruelty they showed her. So the king took a step, went with all the villagers to the place she was buried to seek for her forgiveness. They performed all the traditional rites and had to organize a ceremony to celebrate her. Months after, Umudike eventually got free and scarcity was over. Chidinma, on the other hand, married the prince. Her family became very wealthy and the people of Umudike lived in peace and harmony again. A law was placed that no one should ridicule or reject anyone, rather make them feel accepted. Even if any sorrow or any trouble strikes anyone, no one should accuse anyone and make them feel as though they are not a part of the village. Anyone caught doing that would be banished from Umudike. But the real character in this story is Chidinma. Chidinma is the reason for Nkoli's mercy on Umudike, Chidinma's niceness to Umudike too. Nkoli saved Umudike from a lot of troubles. The moral here is, be nice to everyone. Don't judge people because others are judging them. You may never know their true story. Render help if you can. Be ready to amend your wrongdoings. Turn from your bad ways and seek forgiveness from those you've wronged. And lastly, nothing lasts forever.